Alrighty then, welcome back to an experimental pod, where today we're actually doing several unusual things that's not usually present on our channel. First things first, I do have a 2-month-old baby sitting next to me, so we will all be praying that it keeps smiling and will not start screaming. Second of all, today we're not looking at a full game or an early access game. What we're gonna be looking at is actually a demo game, which is a prequel to a full title coming out next year. Furthermore, I'm also going to be a no-script Andy today, for the sake of trying it out, and because it should hopefully take less time and give the baby less time to start screaming, which would be ideal. Now with all of that out of the way, let's take a glance at the Foretold Exordium. Bless you. Bless you. Now looking at the game's own description, what it poses to be is supposedly an RPG, a card battler, a strategy dungeon crawler. Key features being exploring branching roads along the world map, diving into a deep, fully voiced narrative with interesting characters. Persona points allow you to level up Herbert's various skills. Skill checks will allow you to test your character build, and you can hone your deck against the dark, corrupted things. I will say most of this we can pretty happily disagree with, but we'll see if there's anything in it. First of all, what on earth is the genre of this game? Well, it's not a role-playing game, it's somewhat of a card battler, I will say. Strategy, yeah, in some sense, as much as you can call maybe Tetris strategy. And dungeon crawler, maybe. If you ask me, in a dungeon crawler you actually have multiple options in which direction you want to proceed as you go deeper and deeper to face the final boss, or maybe a variety of final bosses. Currently in this demo version of the Foretold, you're pretty much going down a straight corridor. There are a few points on the map where you can decide if you want to turn left or right, so to speak, but it's going to be the same choice every single time you hop into it. I will mention while we're at this point that we're looking at a game that should take you roughly, let's say, 2 hours on normal difficulty, even during your first playthrough, to get from start to finish, and then you will have an option to play again or increase the difficulty. On that note, let's get back to the genre of the actual game. So, mostly the Foretold is a mix between Tetris and a card game. You will have a card deck, which you draw from every single turn, but your cards are pretty much actions that you can use to interact with the board in front of you. The board in front of you contains 4 columns with 3 rows, stacking cards that drop down turn by turn by turn until they reach the very bottom part of the whole gaming board you're looking at, where you're supposed to collect numbers that are randomly generated each major combat phase, so to speak. So let's say bottom left you will see a number 5, next to it number 6, number 2 and number 8. Cards keep dropping down turn by turn, each of them with a pre-defined number on them. And what you're basically doing is you're doing elementary level maths and using your cards to interact with the board. Let's say you want to move one of the cards to a column one to the right. Maybe you need to add up 2 cards, and then that will reach the requirement at the bottom of the whole column. Maybe you don't have enough turns to finish the addition, and you will speed up the progress of the cards falling down one by one. This is basically the core gameplay loop. You see the cards, you take a moment to figure out if and how you can add them up to meet the numbers on the bottom of the screen. The more numbers you can successfully add up, the better your incoming attack is. The end goal is there's always a bad guy on the right side, you are on the left side, the bad guy is going to attack you, but it has an HP pool, you want to reduce it to 0. To reduce it to 0, you, as I said, fill up these little spots at the bottom of the playing board. The more you manage to fill up, and when I say fill up, meet the number requirement you can read on it, the stronger your attack will be. You will gain increased damage, increased accuracy to hit the enemy, and your weapons can have various modifications to them. Maybe they cause bleed, maybe they actually give you shield, they might reduce enemies' accuracy, and so on and so forth. The more slots you manage to actually lock in, the higher this added bonus is going to be. Maybe if you lock in one slot, then it's going to cause a bleed damage of 1 for 2 turns, but maybe if you lock in 3, the bleed damage is going to be higher, last longer, or in any other way gain you increased benefits. This is pretty much 70-80% of the game. You go through these opponents, reduce their health to 0, until you get to the very end of the demo, which, as I said, should take you roughly 2 hours, and then you meet up with the final boss and hopefully put him to rest. You then, as I said, either go to a higher difficulty or you stay on the same difficulty and attempt to try out a new approach to beating the game. There's actually a reasonable variety of weapons, I would say, with different, which enable different styles of play. Maybe you want to build a battle tank with massive amounts of armor. Maybe you want to be a health tank and just ignore taking hits altogether because you're so bulky. Try to survive relying on dodge chance. You can try to kill your opponents by stacking debuffs or just by going for pure damage and hopefully whittling them down faster than they can do to you. At first I wasn't sure there's actually any replayability, but I decided to go in a second time, a third time, a fourth time, and I will say I actually enjoyed every single standalone attempt I did. I did go for deeply different approaches each time, both with regards to weapon choices and item choices, so to speak, or talent choices, which we have not yet talked about, but it's also a system within the game. At certain points on the map, you can decide to level one of 3 core attributes with a random added effect, which can be increased dodge chance, increased stamina, increased chance to hit, for example, but it also can be something less passive. It can have semi-active effects on your gameplay. For example, there's a passive that you can pick up which rewards you if you fill or lock in the separate columns in a specific order it asks you to go by. What I'm trying to say is, at first glance, I'm not sure anyone would expect it to be on the level of replayability as the game actually is. I for sure was surprised by enjoying it over and over again. To round this up, I think we also need to mention the downsides of the game, or the lowlights of the experience, what you can expect and what will hopefully be polished or just removed or replaced by the time the actual game full title comes out. First of all, the tutorial. It's absolute batshit right now. You read through the tutorial, you try to understand what's going on. I kid you not, it took roughly 2/3 of my first actual playthrough to understand what even is the main point of the game. Until that point, I was basically just randomly clicking on things and hoping that something positive will be the outcome. I think given how the game plays right now, including the actual visualization, the HUD of the game being a bit all over the place, I think what needs to happen is players need a more step-by-step, more highlighted tutorial to properly understand what's going on, or the different elements of the gameplay area need to be refocused better. Being able to spot information certainly is another thing that needs added clarity. There are certain mechanics of the game that even after 4 playthroughs I don't understand exactly how they work or how they are calculated. For example, bleed damage, or there's also a specific mechanic that actually stacks bleed turn by turn by turn. The way these numerical results are calculated seem to vary too much. They seem to not align with the figures you would be given if you hover over the actual damage over time icon where it says, okay, this amount of bleed is going to be done. And multiple times I looked at it and I was like, okay, I'm gonna need like 2 more turns to finish this combat. Let's play somewhat defensively. Turns out my calculations ended up totally off, and if I did absolutely no defensive play that turn but went all out offense, for example, I would have just finished the combat right there, dealing an insane amount of damage. So I think there's something going on with how these attributes, these debuffs, these buffs are being presented and calculated. It might just be my simplicity that stops me from understanding what's going on, or maybe there's some calculation issues. Maybe there's it's just a situation of not enough clarity, not enough explaining how things work. So that's a big thing, including the tutorial that I mentioned. Something else I'm also hoping we will be able to witness when we get to the full release is the different aspects of the game being more fleshed out. What I mean is, right now, Foretold is somewhat of a card game, but you don't really have the time and necessary resources to customize a deck that you will be using during your run. It's set up somewhat like a roguelike title, meaning whenever you go in, you will get randomly generated perks, weapons, items, and so on and so forth. But it's not really a roguelike, like the dungeon, so to speak, that you're going to be rolling through. It's always the same. It's set, the enemies are set, a few events seem to be changing, but most of the encounters will be the same. The points of interest on the map that you will come across will be the same in the same order. And despite the claim that there's a deep story going on here, there's no real story going on in the demo, let's be honest. I would assume this is going to be easily fixed. Like, I would assume there's going to be some kind of interesting overlapping story in the full title. We'll have to wait and see. But that's also a point that would be nice to have upgraded or fleshed out in the full release. Other than that, probably my very last complaint would be this extremely annoying character that your main character travels around with, this green ectoplasmic spooky ghost thingy. I swear to God, it has the most annoying voice I have come across this year in any game. It would be nice if that was reconsidered. I don't think that's a realistic expectation, so that's probably something you will have to live with. Either way, all that negativity out of the way, what we're talking about is the Foretold Exordium. It's a free demo. You just need to go to Steam, download it. It's almost guaranteed to deliver a few hours of fun, because the gameplay is once you actually unlock it in your brain, once you understand what the core concept wants you to do, it's going to allow for a relaxing experience. It's going to let you think. It lets you feel smart for the choices you make. Whenever you actually manage to take a turn where you manage to fill all 4 columns with the correct number, that's an absolute high point of the game. You feel like you're fucking Albert Einstein right there. You just solved every single problem on the planet. It's a really high moment. You really feel smart. And the lows are, I think, shallow, really shallow lows, and things that are not supposed to be fully fledged out in a demo title. Basically, that's all for today. The Foretold Exordium. If it piqued your interest at all, good luck with it, have fun with it, and we'll be back soon.